I still remember the smell of the rain that night. Thick, metallic, like the air before a storm that never ends. They said grief comes in waves, but for me, it hit like a freight train that never stopped. It's been 6 months since they found Ryan's body, 6 months since the police called it an accident, and 6 months since I stopped believing in justice. Everyone said he was drunk, that he took the curve too fast on the coastal road and went straight through the guardrail. End of story. Case closed. But Ryan didn't drink. Not anymore. Not since his dad died. I should know. I was the one who poured out every bottle in our apartment. So, when Detective Marshall told me to let it go, I smiled. I nodded. And that was the exact moment something inside me broke. We were supposed to get married in 3 weeks. I'd already picked out the flowers. White roses with baby's breath. Ryan said they reminded him of snow. He grew up in Maine. He missed the cold. I used to tease him that he moved to the California coast just to escape his own ghosts. Funny how I ended up haunted instead. Everyone in town came to the funeral. It was one of those postcard towns where everyone knows everyone, and tragedy spreads faster than wildfire. There were casseroles and condolences, people whispering things they didn't mean. But what I remember most wasn't the funeral. It was what happened afterward. 3 days later, I went to Ryan's job to pick up his things. He'd been working as a contractor for a private security firm, the kind that did consulting work for rich clients. When I got there, his boss, a man named Dalton, looked uncomfortable, like he wanted me gone. He handed me a cardboard box with Ryan's name scrawled on it. "Sorry for your loss," he muttered. Then he looked over my shoulder and shut the office door. Inside the box were a few photos, his work badge, a leather notebook, and his phone, which was locked. They told me it was wiped clean before being returned. That was the first lie, because 2 nights later, I charged it and found one message still sitting in the drafts folder. Unsent. It said, "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Check the project files, start with Marcus." Marcus. His best friend. Our best friend. Marcus and I went way back. College, parties, late nights, bad coffee, and promises we never kept. He was the guy who introduced me to Ryan. He was the best man at our engagement party. And the night before Ryan died, Marcus called me. He said Ryan had been acting strange, paranoid even, talking about quitting his job. He said Ryan was under pressure, that he needed rest, that he might do something reckless. Now I replay that call every single day, because Marcus wasn't trying to warn me. He was setting the stage. I didn't tell anyone about the draft message. Not my sister, not the police, not anyone. I learned fast that the truth doesn't get you justice. It just paints a target on your back. So I played the part. The grieving fiancé, the fragile girl who couldn't move on. But inside, I was cataloguing everything. Every word, every glance, every lie. That's how I noticed Marcus started avoiding me. He didn't answer calls, didn't come by, didn't even look me in the eye at the memorial fundraiser his girlfriend hosted. When I finally cornered him, he smiled. That fake, polite smile that made my stomach turn. "Soph, I know you're hurting, but Ryan made mistakes. You can't dwell on it forever." He patted my shoulder like I was a child. And in that moment, I knew. He wasn't just lying. He was afraid. A week later, I broke into Ryan's old laptop. He'd changed the password, but he always used pieces of dates that meant something to him. It took me 3 tries. When it opened, my hands were shaking. Inside, there was a folder named Project Covenant. Most of the files were encrypted, but one video played. It was grainy, recorded from his car's dash cam. Ryan's voice came through, low and urgent. "If I'm right, Dalton's selling client data to someone offshore. I've got proof. But Marcus, he's in deeper than I thought. If I don't make it back. Then the footage cut to static. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I just stared at the paused video, his voice echoing in my head. Marcus, Dalton, offshore, proof. It wasn't an accident. It was a clean-up job. And Ryan had been the loose end. I wish I could say I called the cops right then, but I didn't. Because the truth is, I didn't want them to handle it. I wanted them to feel it. The fear, the panic, the helplessness I felt when I got that call. Revenge doesn't come easy. It takes patience, precision, and pain. And I had plenty of all three. The next morning, I started small. I went to the diner where Marcus always had breakfast. Black coffee, egg whites, no toast. I sat in the corner booth, sunglasses on, pretending to scroll through my phone. When he walked in, laughing with someone from the gym, I almost lost it. The same easy charm, the same crooked grin Ryan used to tease him about. But now, every word felt like poison. He didn't see me, or maybe he did and didn't care. Either way, I followed him when he left. He drove to Dalton Security's warehouse outside town, the one that supposedly shut down months ago. He parked behind it, stayed for almost an hour. When he left, I walked the perimeter and found a broken side window. Inside were stacks of crates and a few office desks. I opened one drawer, empty. Another, filled with flash drives. Most were labelled with client names, but one said Covenant. My pulse was pounding. I took it, slipped it into my jacket, and left before anyone saw me. That night, I plugged it into my computer. The files were encrypted again, but I recognised the pattern. Ryan had used the same encryption for some of our personal stuff. I entered our wedding date. It opened. Inside were scanned documents, contracts, offshore transfers, email threads between Dalton and someone named R. Cho. And there it was, Marcus's name, listed under internal facilitation. He wasn't just involved, he was getting paid. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen and laughing. A sharp, ugly laugh that didn't sound like me. It wasn't justice, I felt. It was clarity. People think revenge is about anger. It's not. It's about peace. And I knew then, I wouldn't stop until they lost everything. I started a journal that night. Not for memories, for strategy. Names, dates, passwords, connections. I mapped it all out on paper, line by line, like a web. At the centre, I wrote one word, Covenant, and under it, in small letters, end them all. But as I sat there, something strange happened. I heard a soft knock at my door, 3 short taps. Pause. Then 2 more. It was 1:17 a.m. My heart stopped. I walked slowly to the door, every instinct screaming, peered through the peephole. No one. Just a folded envelope taped to the doorframe. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single photo. Ryan, standing next to Marcus. Taken the night before he died, and written on the back, in neat block letters, "You're not the only one looking for answers." The photo felt like a live wire in my hand. Ryan and Marcus side by side, grinning like brothers. Behind them, a dimly lit parking lot. A neon sign blurred in the background. It was dated the night before he died. My stomach turned. That night, Marcus had told me he hadn't seen Ryan in over a week. And the note, "You're not the only one looking for answers." I looked out into the empty street, rain streaking down the pavement, the kind of California drizzle that makes everything feel colder than it should. Whoever left that note knew where I lived. They knew what I was digging into. I locked the door, then double-locked it. Sleep wasn't even an option. I sat at the kitchen table, the photo laid flat under the yellow glow of the overhead light, my laptop open beside it. That neon sign in the background, it looked familiar. I zoomed in, pixel by pixel, until the letters came into focus. Dockside Bar and Grill. It was down by the marina, a dive where Ryan and Marcus used to hang out after work. If that photo was real, and I had no reason to think it wasn't, then Marcus had lied to my face. Again. By morning, I was already in my car, parked across the street from Dockside. The place smelled like old beer and salt water. Rusted boats lined the dock, and the same handful of drunks leaned against the railing, same as always. Inside, it was darker than I remembered. The bartender, a woman with silver hair and a stare that could cut glass, looked up when I came in. "What'll it be?" she asked. "Information," I said. That earned me a half smirk. "You a cop?" "No, just looking for someone who used to come here. Ryan Hale, maybe Marcus Kell too." Her face didn't change much, but her eyes did. She hesitated before wiping down a glass. "Yeah, they came in that night. Got into it pretty bad, actually." My chest tightened. "Got into it?" She nodded. "Marcus was pissed. Said Ryan was screwing him over on some job. Ryan said something about quitting, about being done with all of them. Then Marcus left. Ryan stayed another half hour, met with someone else." "Someone else? Who?" I asked. She shrugged. "Tall guy, military type. Didn't give a name. They talked outside by the docks. Then Ryan left alone." My pulse pounded in my ears. "Do you have cameras?" "Not working, not for years." Of course. I walked down to the docks after that. The wind whipped off the bay, cold and sharp. I stood where Ryan must have stood that night, staring out of the dark water. Whoever that military type was, he was probably the person behind that note. And if he was looking for answers, it meant he didn't trust Dalton or Marcus either. But what was his connection to Ryan? I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the spot, of the parking lot, of the bar's neon sign. Everything felt heavy, like I was walking through the last night of his life, piece by piece. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around. Nobody. Just wind and gulls and the sound of waves slapping against the dock. I drove home fast, half expecting headlights in my rearview mirror. But the road stayed empty. By the time I reached my street, my hands were trembling. That's when I saw it. A dark sedan parked across from my house. Windows tinted, engine idling. I sat there for a second, pretending to check something on my phone. Then the car pulled away, smooth, controlled, like whoever was driving wanted me to know I'd been seen. The message was clear: stop digging. But they didn't know me very well. That night, I went through Ryan's files again. I rewatched the dash cam clip until I could hear the faintest sounds behind his voice. Footsteps, maybe. Or a door slamming. Then, I froze the frame right before the static hit. A reflection in the window. Someone standing behind his car. The outline was blurry, but it wasn't Marcus or Dalton. Too tall, too broad. The same description the bartender gave me. The same man from the docks. I decided to bait him. If he wanted me to stop, maybe he'd show himself again if he thought I was close. I posted a message on an old forum Ryan used to use for his contracting gigs. A private board only their team had access to. It was short. Need to talk about Covenant. You were right. He didn't deserve what happened. Then I waited. 2 days later, I got a reply. Anonymous account, no photo, just one line. Meet me, tomorrow, 10 p.m, Pier 7, come alone. Everything in me screamed don't go, but the part of me that missed Ryan, the part that still heard his voice at night, couldn't ignore it. By the time I parked near the pier, the air was thick with fog. Streetlights flickered in the mist. I kept my phone recording, hidden in my jacket pocket. He was already there. Tall, black jacket, ball cap pulled low. His posture was rigid, military, like the bartender said. "You came," he said, voice low and steady. "Who are you?" I asked. He hesitated. "Name's Cole. I worked with Ryan. We were on the same contract last year." "Then why the secret notes?" He looked out toward the water. "Because I don't know who I can trust. Covenant's bigger than you think. Dalton's just a middleman." "Middleman for what?" He turned back to me. His eyes were grey, unreadable. "Data smuggling, government clients. They were selling intel to private buyers overseas. Ryan found out. He was supposed to hand it to the feds. But someone tipped Dalton off." "Marcus?" I said quietly. Cole didn't answer, but the flicker in his eyes told me enough. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because Ryan didn't deserve to die, and because you might be the only one left who can expose them." He handed me a small flash drive. Everything I could salvage before I went dark. Names, transfers, locations. But don't trust anyone in uniform. They've got people everywhere. I took it, but before I could say another word, he stiffened, eyes locking on something behind me. A car engine revved. Headlights flared through the fog. Cole shoved me down behind a stack of crates just as gunfire shattered the silence. He fired back twice, sharp, controlled shots, then grabbed my arm. "Go!" We ran, feet pounding against the wood, the air thick with smoke and salt. Behind us, a bullet ripped through a lamppost. Cole turned and fired again. "Keep moving!" We made it to the end of the pier. He ducked behind a railing, covering me. "Who the hell are they?" I yelled. "Dalton's cleanup team," he shouted back. "They know you're alive, and what you found." A shot whizzed past my ear. Cole returned fire. 2 more flashes in the dark, and then everything went silent. Just the sound of waves, heavy breathing, and my own heartbeat slamming against my ribs. When I looked back, the car was gone. Cole stood, checking his sidearm. "They won't stop now," he said. "You've crossed the line." Back at my place, I copied the flash drive onto 3 encrypted folders, hidden under random file names. One on my laptop, one on a cloud server, one on an old USB drive I'd mailed to my sister in the morning. Cole sat at the kitchen table, bleeding from his arm. I patched him up in silence. He winced, but didn't complain. "You sure you want to keep going?" I looked him dead in the eye. "They killed the man I loved. I'm not stopping until they lose everything." He gave a small nod. "Then we move fast. Tomorrow we hit Dalton's accounts. He's laundering through a front company in San Diego." "How do you know?" "I built the system," he said, "before I knew what it was for." By the time the sun rose, my apartment looked like a war room. Maps, documents, strings connecting faces and names. Marcus, Dalton, Cho, and now Cole. But something still nagged at me. The photo. The night before Ryan died. If Cole had been working with him, where was he in that picture? When I asked, Cole hesitated just a little too long. He finally said, "I wasn't there that night." But his eyes told a different story. And then my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. You shouldn't trust him either. By the next morning, I'd memorized every word on that text. You shouldn't trust him either. It looped in my head like a warning I didn't want to believe. Cole was the first person who hadn't treated me like I was crazy. The first one who looked me in the eye and said, "Yes, they killed him." But I'd learned the hard way that everyone has a motive, and the truth always comes with a price. We drove to San Diego that afternoon. Cole said Dalton's money ran through a dummy tech startup called Viridian Systems, hidden in an office park that looked like every other anonymous corporate building on the West Coast. Sterile, bland, forgettable, the kind of place you'd never expect to hide a crime. Inside the car, silence hung thick. Cole focused on the road, his hand steady on the wheel, a faint scar running down his left wrist. I caught myself staring at it, wondering what story it told. "You keep looking at me like you're trying to solve me," he said without glancing over. "Maybe I am." He smiled faintly. "You won't find much." That's what Ryan used to say. He didn't respond, just tightened his grip on the wheel. We parked 2 blocks away. Cole handed me a small flash drive, different from the one before. "This one's a key," he said. "Once we're inside, plug it into any terminal you find. It'll pull Dalton's offshore transfer logs. We get the data, we burn the rest." I nodded. My heart was hammering, but it wasn't fear. It was something else. Focus. We slipped into the building through a side entrance. Cole moved like he'd done this 100 times before. Every motion precise, deliberate. No hesitation. He disabled the security panel in seconds. I watched him, his calm, his control, and part of me wondered if Ryan had trusted him too easily. The office was empty. Weekend, lights low, the hum of servers filling the air. I moved fast, sliding the flash drive into a terminal. Lines of code flashed across the screen. "Got it," I whispered. "Accounts, transfers, offshore routing numbers." "Copy it, all," Cole said. But before the transfer finished, I froze. Because there it was, a name buried deep in one of the documents. Marcus Kell, co-founder, Viridian Systems. My blood ran cold. Marcus wasn't just in on it. He'd built the company. I turned to Cole. "Did you know?" His jaw tightened. "Not until now. Don't lie to me." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Guilt, regret, maybe both. "Ryan suspected it," he said quietly. "He thought Marcus was feeding Dalton information. That's why he went to meet him that night, to confront him." I felt the air leave my lungs. "He met him that night. I saw the photo." Cole nodded slowly. "Yeah, but he wasn't supposed to die there." We copied the files, wiped the drives, and left before anyone could trace the breach. In the car, I stared at the city lights flickering across Cole's face. "You didn't tell me you were there that night," I said. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because it wouldn't have mattered. By the time I got there, the car was already in the water." My throat tightened. "You were at the crash?" He nodded once. I tried to pull him out, but Dalton's men were already on scene. 2 black SUVs. They told me to walk away or I'd end up next to him. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But that text haunted me. You shouldn't trust him either. Back at the motel, I watched Cole sleep in the armchair by the door, gun within reach. He looked peaceful. Too peaceful for a man living in constant danger. I opened my laptop, scrolling through the files again. One name stood out. R. Cho, the offshore contact. There were dozens of wire transfers, all tagged with code names. One was different. A payment of $250,000 labelled Operation Closure, dated the day after Ryan's death, and the signature on the authorising document wasn't Dalton's. It was Cole's. My breath caught. I stared at it, my hands going numb. He'd signed it. Cole. I almost woke him right then, demanded an explanation, screamed, cried, but something stopped me. If the text was right, then I needed proof. So I copied the entire folder and sent it to an encrypted account I'd set up the night Ryan died, just in case. Then I closed the laptop and pretended to sleep. At sunrise, Cole was gone. His gun, his bag, the flash drive, all gone too. A note sat on the table. "Don't go looking for me. Finish what you started." I drove back to the coast that afternoon, the weight of it all pressing down like a storm. Every road felt empty, every face suspicious. At a gas station outside Oceanside, I spotted a familiar car. Dark sedan, tinted windows. the same one that had followed me before. I didn't stop, just drove faster. When I got home, I found my apartment door unlocked. Inside, chaos. Drawers open, files gone, walls stripped bare. Every trace of my investigation erased, except one thing, the photo. It was lying on the kitchen table, but this time there was someone else in it. A man standing in the far background, half in shadow. Cole. My body went cold. He'd lied about not being there, lied about the crash, lied about everything. That text, "You shouldn't trust him either," hadn't been a threat. It had been a warning. And now he'd vanished. That night, I went to Marcus's house. I didn't care about plans or caution anymore. I just needed answers. He lived in a gated community outside town, the kind of place where everyone pretends their lives are perfect. I parked 3 blocks away and walked in through the woods behind the lot. The air was thick with humidity, the scent of pine and ocean salt mixing in my lungs. Lights were still on inside. Through the window, I saw Marcus, pacing, phone pressed to his ear, voice raised. I moved closer, crouched behind the hedges. "Yeah, I told you, she's not letting it go," he said into the phone. "No, I haven't told Dalton yet. He thinks she's just grieving." A pause. Then, "I don't care what Cole said. We should have ended it that night." My heart stopped. Cole. They knew each other. He wasn't helping me. He was controlling me, guiding me exactly where they wanted. I stepped back, a branch snapping under my shoe. Marcus froze, turned toward the window. "Hold on," he said into the phone. I ran. The next sound I heard was a gunshot. Glass shattered behind me. I dropped to the ground, heart pounding, dirt and leaves in my mouth. Another shot. Closer. I crawled through the brush until I reached the road. Tires screeched behind me. Headlights flared. Marcus's voice echoed through the dark. "Sophie, don't do this!" I ran. He fired again, wild, desperate, but missed, and I didn't stop until I reached my car. When I finally looked back, he was gone. I drove straight to the police station. I was done hiding. But when I walked in and asked for Detective Marshall, the desk sergeant frowned. "Detective who?" "Marshall. He handled Ryan Hale's case." The sergeant looked at his screen. "There's no Detective Marshall in this department, ma'am. Not now, not ever." The world tilted. The man who told me to let it go, who closed Ryan's case, who convinced me to stop digging, he never existed. Every single step I'd taken since that night had been manipulated. Dalton, Marcus, Cole, even the police. They weren't just covering up a murder, they were building something bigger. And somehow I was right in the centre of it. As I stood there, trying to breathe, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. You're in danger. Meet me tonight. Same pier. Bring everything." The sender, Ryan's old number. When my phone lit up with Ryan's old number, the world went silent. Every sound around me, the hum of the station, the shuffle of papers, the murmur of voices, faded into nothing. It couldn't be him. His phone had been returned to me, wiped, dead, and yet there it was, his name glowing on the screen like a heartbeat I thought I'd buried. "You're in danger. Meet me tonight. Same pier. Bring everything." My thumb hovered over the message. I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe it was him. But logic screamed otherwise. Still, I went. Because grief doesn't make you rational. It makes you reckless. By the time I reached Pier 7, the fog had rolled in heavy, swallowing the lights. The sound of waves muffled like whispers under glass. The pier looked the same as the night I met Cole. Same flickering street lamp, same creaking boards. But tonight, it felt different, colder. I waited. 10 minutes, then 20. At exactly 10:37, I heard footsteps behind me. "Don't turn around," a voice said. It wasn't Ryan's voice. It was a woman, calm, deliberate, with a hint of exhaustion. "You have something that doesn't belong to you," she said. My pulse spiked. "Who are you?" She stepped into view. Tall, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, wearing a black windbreaker. She looked like law enforcement, but carried herself like someone who didn't report to anyone. "Name's Special Agent Dana Pierce, FBI." "FBI?" She flashed a badge so fast I barely caught it. "You've been digging into Project Covenant. We need to talk." We sat in her car, windows fogged, heater humming. She slid a folder onto the dashboard. Inside were surveillance photos. Dalton, Marcus, Cole, all marked and dated. One photo made my breath catch. Ryan, alive, standing beside Cole. "This was taken 3 weeks before the crash," she said. I looked up, words catching in my throat. "He was working with you?" "Not exactly," Pierce said. "Ryan was an informant. He came to us after uncovering what Dalton and his network were doing. We put him under deep cover." "So he knew?" "He knew everything. Viridian systems, the offshore laundering, Marcus's involvement. He was building a case from the inside." My chest tightened. "Then why didn't he tell me?" She looked out the windshield. "He couldn't. The moment you knew, you'd be leverage." I swallowed hard. The truth hit like ice water. Ryan hadn't been distant because of me. He'd been protecting me. Pierce leaned forward. "Before he died, Ryan sent us fragments of data. We couldn't decrypt all of it, but what you stole from Viridian, that completes the puzzle." I stared at her. "You're saying the flash drive?" She nodded. "That's the key. It ties every transfer directly to Dalton and Marcus. But Cole, what about him? He's not what you think. He was one of ours once, went rogue after the operation burned. We believe he's been playing both sides, feeding Dalton intel while pretending to protect you." I thought back to his words, his calm, his precision, his signature on that transfer document. Of course. "So what now?" I asked. Pierce looked at me with the weary eyes of someone who'd seen too much. "Now, we end it. But you have to trust me. No one else." We arranged to meet the next morning at a secure office downtown to hand over the drive. I went home, exhausted but wired, every nerve on edge. Inside, the apartment was dark, too dark. The faint smell of cigarette smoke hit me first, then I saw the shadow move. "Put it down, Sophie." Cole stepped out of the darkness, gun in hand. I froze. "You were working with them." He shook his head. No. You're being played." "By who? The FBI agent?" His eyes hardened. "Pierce isn't FBI. She's Dalton's cleaner." I laughed, a raw, broken sound. "You expect me to believe that?" He tossed something on the table. A phone. On the screen was a text thread. "Dalton, Pierce. Meet the girl. Get the drive. Eliminate, if necessary." My stomach dropped. Cole stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Ryan found out Dalton had an inside contact in law enforcement. He just didn't know how high it went. Pierce shut him down before he could expose her." I wanted to scream. I wanted to believe neither of them, but the pieces fit too neatly. Pierce shows up right after the message. Cole disappears conveniently before my place is trashed. Everyone's twisting the same truth in different directions. "Why did you sign that transfer?" I asked. His expression softened, just slightly. "Dalton forced it. He had my sister. I wired the money to keep her alive. I've been trying to fix it ever since." My throat tightened. "And you expect me to trust you now?" "No. I expect you to stay alive." He tossed me a small earpiece. "Tomorrow, you meet Pierce. Give her a decoy drive. The real one stays with me. When she makes a move, we'll have proof." "Proof of what?" that she killed Ryan. I barely slept. The line between truth and manipulation had blurred beyond recognition. When the sun came up, I drove to the meeting spot, an old government building on the edge of downtown. Pierce was already there, calm, composed, coffee in hand. "You brought it?" she asked. I nodded, sliding the flash drive across the table. Her eyes flickered, just once, and I saw it. Satisfaction. Before she could say another word, a faint voice crackled in my ear. "Cole, she's armed. 2 men outside. Stay calm." Pierce leaned back. "You've done the right thing, Sophie. Ryan would have wanted you safe." My fingers clenched around the edge of the chair. "You knew him well, didn't you?" She smiled. "Better than you think." Then, almost tenderly, she said, "You really did love him." And that's when I saw the flash of a silencer under her jacket. I moved first, flipping the table, ducking low. The shot missed by inches. Glass shattered, alarms blared, and I ran. Cole burst through the side door, firing twice. Pierce's men went down. She slipped out a back exit before he could reach her. We drove for miles without speaking. The sun bled red across the highway, the city shrinking in the rearview mirror. Finally, I asked, "Was any of this ever about justice?" Cole exhaled. "For Ryan, it was. He left something behind for you." He handed me a small USB drive, different from the others. "Found this in his locker months ago. He made me promise to give it to you if things went bad." My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. A single video file. Ryan's face appeared on the screen. Tired, bruised, but alive. "Hey, Soph. If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it. Don't blame yourself. Don't chase them. Promise me that. The people we're dealing with, they don't stop. I thought I could handle it. I was wrong. But if you found this, finish what I started. Make sure they can't hurt anyone else. I love you. Always." His voice cracked on the last word. The screen went black. I sat there for a long time, silent. The kind of silence that fills your chest until it hurts to breathe. Cole finally said, "We can take them down, Sophie. Pierce, Dalton, Marcus, all of them." I looked out at the horizon. "No, we will." Because Ryan's war had become mine, and the only thing stronger than love is revenge. They tell you revenge will leave you empty. They say it hollows you out until there's nothing but an echo where your heart used to be. They are wrong. Revenge fills you. It fills the spaces the world stole, packs the cavities grief left behind with something harder, sharper. It does not heal. It rearranges. It makes you into someone who can move through rooms and faces and get the job done. The plan was simple enough on paper. Expose Dalton and his network. Get the evidence to people who could be trusted, if such people existed, and end the chain of violence. But nothing about what had happened since Ryan died had been simple. Dalton had friends in places where light couldn't reach, and Marcus had a way of turning favours into bullets. We had one advantage left: Ryan's last file. The video. The registry of transfers. The file Cole had given me. And the additional caches he'd dug up after going rogue. We stitched it together like a map and gave each piece a name. Operation. Quiet. Harbour. Cole and I split roles the way we'd split a meal when we had no appetite for anything but the truth. He took the confrontation. I took the broadcast. He wanted to be the blade. I wanted to be the flame that made people watch him burn. Pierce, or what she had pretended to be, had run. She was cleaner than we'd expected, but not perfect. In 4 days, we picked apart her network. The shell companies, the courier routes, the offshore accounts. I mailed a decoy, drive to Pierce's real handler, and set up a false transfer trace to lure them out. Marcus, eager to stop me from dragging him under, took it personally. Dalton was the kind of man who underestimated the quiet ones. He thought I would sit and wait. The night we moved, the coast was mercilessly still. No wind. The ocean lay flat like glass, reflecting light without life. We parked 2 blocks from Dalton's marina compound, the same area where dockside loomed like a memory of better lies. Dalton always liked waterfront property. He liked the smell of salt with his money. Cole's hands were steady as he checked the gun, as if they had always been made for that. His scar glinted pale in the moonlight. I watched him breathe. I watched him hold himself like a man who had practiced being brave when it mattered. "Once we start, there's no going back," he said. "No," I said. "There's only forward." We moved in 3 waves. Cole and 2 people he trusted from his old unit, men who owed him in ways that didn't show on paper, cut the power. I slipped into the security office, 1 breath at a time, like I could sneak by the guilt that occupied my chest. The monitors showed empty docks, a warehouse, a small office where Dalton kept his ledgers. Cameras looped pre-recorded footage. Cole had prepared that part. We were ghosts. I found Dalton in his office, suited and angry, a man who had always believed his suits could armour him from the world. He smelled like expensive whiskey and defeat. He had 2 goons, obligatory and dangerous, slumped against a couch. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. That, we later learned, was strategic. He preferred to operate behind clean doors, fingers never too dirty to call it his business. "Who are you?" Dalton asked, and he tried to make his voice sound amused. He failed. "Sophie Hale," I said, and the letters in my name felt like ammunition. "You knew Ryan, you killed him." His laugh was bitter. "You have no idea what you're saying, girl." I let him keep that laugh for only a second. Then Cole moved, fast, the world narrowing into a tunnel I could walk through. He knocked Dalton's phone away. One of his men lunged. The encounter was blunt and physical, the kind of work that makes your palms remember what they are for. I pulled a chair and sat opposite Dalton, putting my hands on the desk like I was signing for the end of something. "We have everything," I said. "The transfers, the accounting, the offshore shells. You paid Marcus. You hired cleaners. You threatened my family. You thought you could make a man vanish and call it weather." He met my eyes, and for a moment I saw fear. Not for himself, but for what his name would mean if the world found out. "That video you left," I said, "Ryan recorded it because he knew you couldn't be trusted with power. He wanted to be sure his story could be told if he died. We have it. Every transfer, every name. We sent copies to media, to a senator, to an independent prosecutor we knew couldn't be bought. Your operation ends tonight." Dalton smiled like a man telling you you're under a delusion. "You think sending files does anything? I have friends who will bury this. You've been playing a game with people who understand how the game is played." "Maybe," I said, "but we played better." Then I pushed a small speaker onto the desk. Cole hit a button. The little device lived. A torrent of file transfers and audible proof began streaming to the hard-line speakers wired into the office and through the city's small private network we'd hijacked. Names, amounts, dates, voices, the recordings of phone calls between Dalton and offshore buyers. The montage of Dalton's men loading crates in the dead of night. Marcus's signature on paper after paper. A knock sounded at the door. 1 knock, then another. The way people knock when they have authority, when they carry badges that still mean something. A patrol car rolled up outside. We had counted on someone answering the broadcast. We had counted on at least one honest person left. The tide turned in moments that felt like seconds. The sound of breaking was not only of physical doors opening, but reputations being smashed. Men at Dalton's office scrambled to erase files, to hide. Dalton stood, the mask slipping. He reached for something, gun, phone, paper, and Cole was there first. The end came not in a dramatic gunfight, but in the small, sharp things that puncture, lie after lie. A press swarm an hour later, cameras pointing, microphones thrust, the public record showing transfers and signatures that could not be disputed. Marcus tried to run. We cornered him by the old dockside garage, the same place where the photograph had been taken. He had no chance. When we dragged him out into the open, he looked like a man who had realised too late that his name would be a brand burned in the public eye. He begged. He said things that made me want to vomit and laugh both. He asked for death in some moments and forgiveness in others. I told him the only thing I had. You can't take him back. You can picture the rest in broad strokes, indictments filed, Pierce's handler arrested, the woman whose badge had been a lie, Dalton's empire collapsing under the weight of ledgers and wire transfers, Marcus on trial with a face made for denial, and the small, elegant court transcript where words like conspiracy and racketeering tumbled out like teeth. But the law, when it moves, is a slow beast. It chews time into pieces. I watched hearings on loop in the living room at Cole's place, the glow of the TV like a false sun. Friends and strangers who had been tucked inside news cycles held up signs. Ryan's name trended in ways I had never imagined, and for a while that made the nights easier. And yet victory wasn't a clean line. There were costs that couldn't be mitigated. Cole disappeared again the week Marcus's trial started. We found out later he'd taken a new identity, his sister's safety bought with choices he had to make by himself. He left me a note. Go live. He meant it. I knew he wanted me to be safe out of love and a guilt that tasted like rust. For all the saving he'd attempted, he couldn't save himself from the things he'd done to survive. Marcus's sentence came down. 10 years. Dalton got more. Pierce's name stained a dozen investigations. The men who had gunned for me at the pier were arrested and, in quiet plea deals, made to talk. The wave of criminal exposure was wide enough that a few small reforms crept into the public eye, policy talks and committee hearings and buzzwords that never change anything. But the people behind screens were in cages, and that felt like enough for nights. What wasn't enough was the small, personal arithmetic of what it had cost me. The silence in the apartment where Ryan's laugh used to fit. The way my sister folded my mail now with reverence I didn't ask for. The way my dreams were no longer places to rest, but scrapbooks of scenes. Ryan's last smile, the photo taped to my kitchen table, the way his voice had ended on that screen. On the day the verdicts were read, I walked to the pier where I'd first been told to meet Cole. The water was alive with light now, the city haloed around it like an afterthought. I stood at the railing and let the salt wind work at the edge of my face. I pulled Ryan's last letter from my pocket, the one he'd asked Cole to deliver if he didn't make it, and read his handwriting like a relic. If you're reading this, I'm sorry I left you to do this, but I needed someone who could. Don't let them silence the rest. Live, Sophie. Live for both of us. I folded the paper and let it go into the tide. You would think letting go would be catharsis. It wasn't. The paper sank and curled and became another small thing swallowed by the ocean. I felt numb then, odd as it sounds, relieved. The knowledge that I'd given them back to the world, their secrets, their money paths, their collusions, was a kind of bargaining. I had traded my sleepless nights for their prison cells. There were late nights afterward when the house felt too large for one person. There were times I woke and reached across the mattress and found only linen. But there were also mornings with coffee and news clippings pinned to the board where I tracked the cases, letters from people Ryan had tried to save, a kid thanking me for making the world safer in ways I couldn't see but which mattered. Cole once told me that justice is not the same as vengeance. He was right. Justice came with paperwork and bailiffs. Vengeance came with the emptiness that follows triumph. They're similar cousins. Both leave you changed. In the end, the price of silence was high. It took Ryan from me. It took pieces of who I used to be. It made me someone who could talk about murder, like a grocery list. But silence had a cost beyond loss. It let people sleep easier. We woke the town, and the town did not forgive easily. It watched, it argued, it raged. Months later, when the hearings faded and the TV moved on, I planted the white roses Ryan had wanted, in a small plot near the pier where people left coins and trinkets. I did it alone. I stayed and watched them bloom, small defiant caps of pale against the dark. They wouldn't bring him back. They wouldn't undo the nights I'd spent listening for footsteps. But they stood there like a promise. They were a public thing, not a private ache. They said, "We remember. We refuse to let this be just another quiet tragedy swallowed by the tide." Sometimes, at night, I still hear Ryan's voice as if he's sitting beside me, offering small, ridiculous theories about the news or complaining about my coffee. Other times, I hear silence, and that is its own kind of company. Not restful, but honest. If there's one thing I learned through all of it, it's this. Silence is a choice. You choose it because you fear the consequences of noise, or you refuse it, and the consequences will decide who you become. I chose to speak. It cost me everything I had, and it gave me back the one thing I could not buy, the truth. The world will never be perfect. People will always prefer quiet complicity to the messy business of asking questions. But for one brief, terrible season, the tide turned. For Ryan, for the ones he tried to save, and for myself, the price of silence was paid. And now I am learning how to live with the reckoning I bought.